but they couldn't figure out what it was. So of course, a lot of these will be unexplained because you don't have sufficient data. But a lot of these had multiple sensors. It said, are being recorded on multiple sensors. It said in the report, and they still couldn't figure out what it was. And I mean, this is the Pentagon, folks.
Mm-hmm,
it's not,
mm-hmm.
It's not, your uncle in his basement. It's the gold standard of this stuff.
Yeah.
So it is very weird, and they ruled out the possibility of it being a foreign nation. They ruled out the possibility of this being a private, company testing stuff, and they ruled out the possibility of this being their own tech. And I mean, I'm not saying they wouldn't lie about this stuff, but if we're taking this at face value, it's none of the above. So what is it? And no one is saying alien because no one dares to say alien. But what is it? It is something. Something is flying out there. Even Obama said we have something in the air. We don't know what it is.
Yeah. Welcome back. We are on today with my guest, Frederik Dirks Gottlieb, on the Too Old for This Shit podcast. I'm your host, Angie. So I just want to let you know that, the new schedule is now every other week I'm releasing a new episode. So instead of being weekly like it used to be, it is now every other week, so twice a month. And listen, as per usual, if you like this show, don't forget to tell a friend. Maybe even two. Like, give it a 5-star rating, a little review. All of that is free to do. And you can even subscribe on it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Radio FM, Amazon Music, for wherever you're listening to it from it right now. This is a free podcast. So it's really free to do. And listen, the more you do that, the more it helps new listeners discover this show, the more it helps this grow. Basically, it gives me more opportunities. The more you do that, you're basically giving Angie, bam, a new opportunity. That's it. It's fabulous, okay? So, on to today's episode. Are we the only civilization in the universe? Do you think there's other intelligent beings already among us, but that we can't see? Called, Earth aliens? What is real? What's a hoax? UFOs have just gone a whole rebrand. We're now calling them UAPs instead of UFOs. Probably to help men in suits to stop giggling when they're having these conversations, because now those conversations are part of the mainstream. And one of the pivotal moments to help that has been when the Pentagon declassified those 3 videos and said, yes, they're, our videos, and yes, with the Pentagon, and there they are. And this is where also my guest comes in, Frederik. He started a podcast on the biggest Danish radio station called Flyvende, tallerken, aka flying saucer in English. And his podcast is absolutely incredible. And I've been it's not even binge, because when it came out, I just started listening to it every single week. I'm just obsessed with it. And I'm so excited to bring him to you and share his podcast with you, because Frederik is an open mind and humble journalist who is open to discuss different avenues and approach to this topic. And it really shows with the array of guests that he's had on. So he has people who are absolute true believers, whether they are scientists, eyewitness, you name it, to the more questioning minds, such as Mick West, who's a really huge personality on YouTube for debunking UFO videos. And that episode with him has already come out on Frederik's podcast. So I wanted to give one of those specifics that we bring on that you'll hear in this episode. And it's about the Pentagon report that came out a few months back. And one of the things that that report include is anything that's included in there is only from the US Navy. So not even the Air Force. There are no reports of UAPs, aka what we used to call UFOs. There are no reports from the Air Force, no one from the commercial airlines, none from the regular military, only the Navy and only US based. So I'm guessing US waters because there's Navy. But they do say that out of those 144 recorded events in there, only one of them was explained. 143 in the scope of 2 years, because only one of them was from like way back when. But 99% of those are from the last 2 years. 143 UAPs that they cannot explain. And those were only the ones that were actually reported. So just to give you a perspective on this, like that's the equivalent of 1.38 times every week. That's the equivalent to me, like in my mind, that's the equivalent of you in the Navy, you on your boat, and you look up in the air and you go, Captain, what's that? And him saying, fuck if I know. Keep sailing. Write it down for the report, but just keep sailing. I don't talk like that, for sure. But that's my interpretation, and it's a lot, okay? That's a lot. That's a lot of times where every time you go, what's that? Don't know. What's that? I don't know. What's that? I still don't know. Whatever that is, whatever the interpretation would be, whatever is happening out there, which we're going to cover in this episode, it is intense. Like, to me, that's a lot. So, without further ado, please help me give a big warm welcome to Frederik. Let's begin. Welcome to the show, Frederik.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me.
So I am really, really, really excited to have you on. I am actually a big fan of your show. So this is the first time I'm actually having someone on who I'm actually like I've listened to every single one of your episodes, including yesterday's, which came out. So I wanna introduce you all to Frederik, because in my opinion, Frederik, he's a trailblazer when it comes to mainstream media, and you're going to find out a little bit more shortly. But he hosts a show called Flyvende, tallerken, which translates to English to flying saucer. And before you jump to any conclusion, you go flying saucer, people with like a metal hat or something. It is actually hosted on, it's called Danmarks Radio podcast. It is the equivalent of BBC. Right. So it's like if BBC Sounds, exactly. And like if BBC Sounds ever released a show on UFOs or UAPs, you'd pay attention. I mean, I would. So that's the caliber of who we have on today. And also, just so you know, Frederik, he interviews. Now, those big names I didn't know, because I've always been interested in stuff like that, but I didn't know the people. You know what I mean? Like the actual, But all these big names in the industry, if you want to call it the industry, he doesn't talk about them. He actually talks with them. So the podcast is really, really, really exciting. And it is in Danish, but there's a lot in English. It's going to get translated, but a bit more about that shortly. So Frederik, I want to say it in Danish, sorry, but Frederik in English. I'm so glad to have you on today. So before we dive into this, could you please introduce yourself, where you live and what you do?
Sure. And I hope my English isn't too bad, because even though I do interview a lot of English-speaking people on my podcast, this is actually the first time I think I'm being interviewed in English. So it's also a first for me, Angie, and I'm very excited about it. My name is Frederik Dirks Gottlieb, is how you say it in Danish. And I'm a journalist here in Denmark. I'm also a film producer. I used to work in fiction, and then I made a move to radio, where I started actually talking about and reviewing TV shows, when that started really to become a thing here in Denmark, when we got Netflix in Denmark and all of that stuff. And then I did some TV shows about it as well. And I've been doing interviewing celebrities on different Danish channels for years. And now I thought I want to dive into my old hobby, or actually it's my dad's hobby with the whole UFO thing. So I asked Danmarks Radio, as you said, equivalent to BBC, in Danish scale, of course. I asked them if I could please do a show about UFOs, and for some weird reason they trusted me and said, let's do this. And I've been doing that for almost a year now.
And it's absolutely amazing. Like, it's so well produced. It follows an arc. And could you please like summarize your podcast, sort of, because there's so many, the way you do it is so different. And like, I want to know sort of like maybe like why you started it, who your co-host, and your approach is. Like, could you tell us a little bit about, because there's a whole context around your podcast?
Sure. As I just stated, I called one of the bosses at Danmarks Radio, and she was just like, "Yep, let's do it. Sounds exciting." I read some of the news stories that had broke at the time, and they desperately need a lot of the listeners who would normally listen to independent shows like your own show, Angie, and who watches a lot of YouTube shows and stuff like that, because a lot of listeners are sort of fleeing the more traditional broadcast channels, as I'm sure you have the same thing going on in your country. But UFO is such a hot topic, and really I've been paying attention since 2017 when the first New York Times article broke. And if you don't know about it, they started writing about UFOs. And when the New York Times is writing about this stuff, you gotta pay attention the same way you gotta pay attention if Danmarks Radio is doing it in Denmark. So something was up, something was changing in the whole tinfoil hat discussion. And last year, during Corona, the summer, during Black Lives Matters, a lot of huge topics, hit the news. Yeah. And sort of under the radar, no pun intended, were the UFO stories. And the New York Times did another huge piece where they actually exposed, I wouldn't call it exposed, but they leaked the information that the Pentagon had a UFO program, an official UFO program, and that they had been looking at weird objects in the sky for several years, actually since, I think, 2008. So this is huge news during the pandemic, and no one is paying attention. And I'm like, we got to talk about this. This is crazy. They also confirmed that, the 3 videos, which are now pretty famous, maybe not for all of your listeners, but there are 3 videos called the Pentagon UFO videos that leaked a few years back. People didn't know if they were real or fake. And the Pentagon also came out and said, they re-released them and said, yes, these come from within our own military. So this is like, for any UFO nerd or just anyone paying attention, this is huge news. This is, one of the biggest stories of the year. And I'm like, I got to do something about this. This is insane. I mean, I at that point, I wasn't even clear what I thought about the whole thing. I was just like, someone got to cover this, and no one did in Denmark. Yeah. So that's when I called, the podcast boss and said, let's go. And of course she trusted me, because I could have made like a silly show with the X-Files music and stuff like that, but we chose another angle, which was the scientific angle.
But that's the thing. And that the thing about your show, which is great, is that, I can really tell like you go on a discovery, because you do the approach of science and also the more philosophical side of it. So because even some of those big scientists, there's, the Harvard, I can't say it right now, because I was talking in the news before, Harvard guy, Avi Loeb, or how do you say it?
Avi Loeb.
Yeah, he sort of also, talks about, he's obviously very much about the science, but even your co-host, who's an astrophysicist, you see, so that's the bit that, this is where your show really stands out, is that, you have the investigate, you're the investigator, because, you're a journalist, so you have that questioning gene in you, you're going to be out there and go through all these different roadmaps. But we really hear from astrophysicists, other kinds of scientists, that, who do quantum, I don't know if it was quantum mechanics or quantum physics, but, and then you have, he also has like jet fighters. Is it fighter pilots?
Yeah, fighter pilots,
Fighter pilots, who come and help you analyze those videos. And then it starts with the Pentagon declassifying those videos. And that's how a little bit how your show starts. And then it sort of moves into the arc of when in June, where you talked about the report, and then obviously there's going to be new things coming on your show, but it really follows the science, and there's a lot of questions that come up, and it made me sort of really think about all kinds of stuff. I was like, oh my God, this is huge, because it's like we cannot deny almost there is something going on, whether we want to call it, an enemy state, as technology, or whether we talk about Earth aliens or space aliens. And, for those who don't know, like Earth, there's this new terminology now with Earth and space aliens where I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Frederik, but isn't it that originally we used to always think of aliens invading us, coming from out of space, from like really long, far away, and somehow they've made this whole way, but then they crash onto a field in Nevada or somewhere in the desert, they just can't get the landing right, they crash.
Very weird.
Very, very, very odd. And so they were always coming from outside, do they want to eat us, invaders or colonizers, who knows? But then there is also this other theory where they may already be here. And part of and I wonder if there was something maybe we because I want to get your opinion, your take, because I think all of the facts, we really need to get it from your podcast, and it's getting translated. So all of you'll be able to hear it. But I want to almost like have this discussion on the philosophical side of it, because, there's all these data that, you provide on your podcast as to why it may be one thing or the other. And actually there's a lot of things that we can't really say for sure. But either way, a lot of people cannot really deny that there's something happening in our airspace on Earth, and that we can't explain everything. And that's, that brings up a lot of different questions. It really does, because you can't ignore it anymore. I mean, there's a lot of people on YouTube debunking this stuff, and any skeptical, critical thinking mind is very welcome. But it's a little bit arrogant at this point, I think, to be a YouTube debunker who think they know better than, in my example, the fighter pilots who come on, or we have the head of air warfare in Denmark to come and look at this, the most knowledgeable guy in Denmark, and the Pentagon people and the task force, and all of these people, if they can't figure out what it is and what is on those videos, and why those fighter pilots who flew for all those years in America tell the stories that they tell, why would a YouTube debunker be able to? So right now, actually, it's a shift of of how we talk about UFOs, where back in the day, the tinfoil hats were the people who talked about aliens, who said, oh, there is something in the sky. And then you had all the rational people who said, no such thing. And you crazy people, we can't talk about aliens. That's silly. And now actually it's a little bit, reversed, because now you have the people who actually say, but we got to look at what's in the sky. There is something. Those are the rational, those are the scientists, those are the fighter pilots, those are Pentagon. And then the people who say, this is nonsense, this is all the media, this is a hoax, whatever. That's the people on YouTube. So completely, 180. It is a 180, but it's also like, there is it's a symptom in, it's a term that's classified in psychotherapy when the less you know, the more confident you are, and we see this
exactly.
I mean, last year was a pure example, it doesn't matter that, it doesn't matter whether you are pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine or believe in COVID or don't believe in COVID. It's a lot of people who are not do not understand medicine or immunology, virology. A lot of them have like really strong opinions, but they haven't even studied it, but they allow themselves to think that they know better than everyone else, and it's like, regardless which side which side, I don't know what the expression is, but it's like whichever side you're shooting, at least have some sort of humility to make sure, maybe like we may not always know everything. And I think it shows that with the guests, and it feels like, the more equipped the people you have on your podcast, it almost sounds like the more humble they are. Like, look, we need to
and the more open, the more open and the more curious. And I think, as you said, just to enhance your statement, it's the more the the more imposter syndrome you kind of develop, right?
Exactly.
So we all know that feeling that even the stuff that we know the most about, we can get really insecure because we know exactly what we don't know. And that is also, my co-host, Anja C. Andersen, who is in Denmark very famous and very, very highly regarded astrophysicist.
She's a professor, and in Denmark, Danish professor is the highest level in the academia you can get, I think.
Yeah, and she's the Danish equivalent to Neil deGrasse Tyson. She has she also has a degree in a professor of public knowledge, I think. So she part of her job is also to explain astrophysics, of course, to the Danish people, and she does a very, very good job. But when I called her, I was like, okay, here is this at least younger than her young guy calling her, asking her to be his co-host on a UFO show. But she was immediately taken by the discussion and the subject, and it's something she's been thinking about a lot. And she mentioned to me before it was a big story, she mentioned Avi Loeb and said, did you know that we had this Harvard professor a few years back who actually believes that we had a spacecraft go through the solar system, and we contacted him, and of course, her being from the Niehls Bohr Institute, is a very highly regarded place internationally. That has opened some doors to some of the international scientists.
Yeah, and she's so chilled as well, Anja. She's very chill,
totally.
And I get it now why she's so good at explaining such really high level concepts of science that it takes years to study, and she just explains it with analogies and just really simple. You're like, oh, I think I understand quantum physics now. And then obviously after the episode, I'm like, I forget what she said because it's so advanced. But it's really, she's fantastic. And so actually, one of the things I want to ask you, Frederik, is what have been the most unexpected aspects that you learned from recording the show, like Flyvende, tallerken, like Flying Saucer podcast?
Wow, it's good. It's a very good question, because there's really every week I feel there's something new that is just blowing my mind. Even just the more basic stuff that I wouldn't say basic, but the more common stuff, astrophysics and stuff that you can actually have a degree in that's not related to UFOs. That is blowing my mind every week when we talk about that. And there's something happening. It's almost like a mini version of what astronauts call the overview effect. When they go to space, they look down, they see the Earth. We had a Danish astronaut called Andreas Mogensen, very famous in Denmark, and he talked about this. And he said, that happens to almost every astronaut. When you see the Earth look so tiny and so beautiful, you something change in your mindset, and you become sort of, you're still the same person, but you do change a lot, and you think about all the petty differences we have on the planet Earth. And that almost happens in a mini version when you do a podcast like mine. When you talk to scientists who can break down the universe, how small we are, how both significant and insignificant we are at the same time, because there's nothing insignificant about you and your life, but in the grander scheme of things, it's tiny. So that humbles you, that makes you think differently a little bit, I think, and that has definitely happened to me. So on a basic level, I feel it's changed me. But for the more bombastic parts, I think me going into this not knowing if I was going to believe in UFOs or if I'm going to debunk UFOs, because I had a journalistic approach. I didn't go, even though my dad was a big UFO guy, I didn't go into this biased, even though I do have an interest, of course, in the subject, as a lot of people have. But I wasn't on a mission to tell the world that, or Denmark, that aliens have visited us, or that they haven't visited us. So I think the more that I dig into this, the more you keep finding intelligent people who have either encountered something or who talk about the probability of something visiting us or something being out there at least. And then you start talking to some of my American guests who have been close to all of this, all of the Pentagon stories that has been in the report and surrounding the videos. And then you get chills down your spine, because this is people, very highly intelligent people, experiencing this stuff over and over again for brief periods of time, and who have no reason to lie. Actually, they have a lot to lose by going forward.
They do, yeah. I mean, even though now, it's on Danish, Danish radio. Danish radio is like, it's also on, it's TV too, for those, for you who's listening and may not be familiar with Danish television, but it is like, even though it's on Danish radio, it doesn't mean that it's completely not taboo to talk about, or it doesn't maybe give a little bit of a stain, in some circles. And I think even today it's very brave to even sort of come out and say whether if you've encountered, seeing something in the air, or if you feel like you've seen an alien, all of that kind of stuff is still very taboo. And so it's a big leap, and I think it's definitely I think it's really a service to be, for you to doing that show, because, it's one of the things that keep coming up is that when I listen to your podcast, is that because it's been so taboo, there's a lot of data we have not collected. So people's witness statements, sailors, because there's a lot of things people see out at sea as well. And when you're a sailor and you work there, you're more likely to be seeing something out at sea. And there's a lot of things that are not being picked up, because people were like 10, 20 years ago, it was like they were worried they were going to be chastised and marginalized by their work and community. So it was a survival thing.
They were.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's right. Those who came out, they were.
Yeah.
I think that there's a little anecdote in one of the episodes, if I remember correctly. I think it is that guy, the sailor. It's probably not his title. I think he was quite high up in the Navy, and I call him a sailor. Sorry, but I can't remember what his job title. What was it?
Actually, the sailor wasn't. He was a what's the English word was. I've never heard it before. In Danish, you call it a styrmand. He's,
let me just go translate. I know what you mean. Is he like the guy who sails the ship? Styrmand.
No, he's not
the boss. Styrmand.
No, he's not the captain. He's like a middle leader.
Okay.
We call it styrmand.
Yeah, it doesn't. It says mate on.
Mate. Yeah, it's called a mate. But... a mate on a ship.
Is that and because his wife? Because the story about his wife, is that him?
Yeah, that's him. And he, this is. I've been contacted by so many people doing this show, of course. But more people than I could ever imagine. It's been hundreds and hundreds. I think almost maybe 1,000 people text me about their own stories with UFOs. Mm-hmm. And that's just the people who listen to the show. That's just the people who think, hey, let me write this guy. And so still probably a small sample of the people who have witnessed something. Yeah. And one of the Pentagon videos is from 2004, and it's from just outside San Diego, the coast out there, and that's the one that's called the Tic Tac UFO. Maybe you've heard of it. It's probably at this point, other than Roswell, the most famous UFO incident in the world, and it's probably the best documented one. And so this guy, he writes me because he heard an ad for my show on the radio. Like, he has no interest in UFOs whatsoever, and he heard an ad for my show, and he was like, some of the stuff that was being edited in the ad that reminded him of something that he experienced himself. And he listened to the show, and he was just taken back to when he was on a ship once. And he was on a ship in 2005, the year after the Tic Tac. He was in the same area between California and Hawaii. I think maybe a few hundred kilometers from where the Tic Tac incident was. And he sends me all his papers. I can see exactly where he sailed, with which company, his position, everything, just to make sure that he's not a phony. And here is this guy, like in Denmark, he's jysk, he's so down to earth.
That's where my family is from, my Danish side. Yeah, so it's countryside. It's like, you don't. Yeah, we're not fluffy. Yeah, it's very direct.
Very direct. You're definitely not telling a lie. That's for sure, and not about something crazy like a UFO. That would make
that's embarrassing. That's really embarrassing in Newland for sure.
Really, So this guy, he writes me, and I call him up, and he's like, dude, it's crazy. I had, almost the exact experience as, the Tic Tac UFO incident. And he tells me this, story of him being out on sea with this big container ship. And he's out on the deck, and he's there with another mate, a guy from the Philippines. And they're smoking a cigarette, just talking. And suddenly this object comes near them, a huge object. I mean, it's about the size of a plane. And it's very close. And the way he describes it's like it looks at him in a way. Mm-hmm. And they are just standing there in, pitch black darkness. And here's this object, in front of them. Almost like Tic Tac, a little bit triangular also is how he describes it. And they just, and then suddenly a few seconds later, it's just rapidly, almost like being pulled away with a force that is, greater than any airplane could ever do. And he stands there, and he was very lucky that he didn't see this alone, because maybe you would think you were losing your mind or something. And they went inside, and they discussed whether to report it or not, but they didn't have the balls to report it. Also, this is a commercial ship, and there's a lot of, stuff going on with this. So he comes home, he tells his wife the story, and immediately she's just, why are you telling me this bullshit? I don't believe any of it. And that made such a big impression of him that he just packed that story away and never told it to anyone until he appeared on my show, 15 years later.
It wasn't was it him as well who, was it him or maybe it was another guest who had told the story to some of their friends. So I think maybe it was someone else, but there's someone who told the story to some of their friends, and then they remembered it, and then this is almost 15 years later or something, where it sort of came out, whether it was in the New York Times article that they saw, there was something that came out around those videos, and they were like, wait, isn't this kind of what you described? And it's really interesting. And one of the things as well that, because I know that, even myself, when I go on Google and I, because when you do the show, you tell people like, this is the video you go on, and then you basically talk people through like with the scientists and the fighter pilots and all of that stuff. So and one of the things they explain though is like, sort of later on, someone else explains that the videos, the quality is obviously very grainy. So it's very hard to even think, is it impressive or not impressive? But there's one of the guys, and I can't remember his name now, you may know.
Gary Voorhis.
Is it, but who says like basically that he'd seen that, or apparently he know people in whatever his government or I can't remember where, but really high, high up people who've actually seen the real video, and they say like, and this is only a snippet of it as well. Not only is it shorter, but the quality is obviously grain for security reasons.
No, he tells the story that
to not overwhelm people or something. Yeah,
they had to send it in an email in 2004. Which is why it's so compressed. That's Gary Voorhis, one of the radar operators, explanation, and he says that they had the radar tapes, and that high-ranking officials came in and took the radar tapes.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was so crazy.
And you always have radar tapes of everything, so the radar tapes are there somewhere. But for some reason, we don't get the radar tapes, but they are providing background for the UAP report, which we haven't gotten to yet, but the Pentagon report that came out this summer. And the other guy you talked about, that was Sean Cahill, I think, the master at arms, which is like a military police on the USS Nimitz, the ship that saw the Tic Tac UFO. Yeah. He told the story and at parties and to friends, and he couldn't understand why this wasn't a big deal, because his whole life has been turned upside down. And then he gives up, and as you said, 15, 16 years later, this comes out in the New York Times, and all of his friends are like, "Wow, dude, this is stuff you talked about."
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like it's everywhere, and it's been there ever since.
But it's almost like it's not really unusual for when anything that's so either really shocking or out of the ordinary, or that we cannot explain, or people are uncomfortable, the people who are really the truth tellers, or whether it's truth or not, but like for them, they're not making stuff up. They're really saying it. This is what I experienced, this is what I saw. Often what we see is people are being gaslighted. And we even see that. I'm listening to this other show called Dr. Death, and there was 4 whistleblowers, 4 doctors who were basically trying to save people's lives by making sure this person did not operate on anyone else anymore, because he was literally butchering people. Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't believe how long, like they were basically make sure they wouldn't earn any money. They were blamed. They were even like persecuted. I mean, you name it. And then years later, it's like, oh no, you guys were doing the right thing. And then even then they tried to like take them down. And it seems to be a thing when it's like, when people just don't want to accept it, they're going to like try and minimize or ridicule or destroy people, which is understandable why people just kept stump. And I think like one of the things that, they kind of like you sort of like touched on a bit earlier is this whole, like, because obviously there isn't really a black and white answer on paper to say, yes, this is from planet or neighboring galaxy. There is really no answer, or to say yes, it is Russia or China, because we always like to be blaming them.
It's always Russia and China.
It's always them, But my question is this: I just wonder, like, because if I mean, I believe everything, that this is all happening and that this is all real. Who it is and what it is, I don't know. I've never met them, so I don't know. But it looks like, obviously, if this is all real, that the technology is incredibly advanced. And like for details, like if you go on Frederik's shows, you'll hear like they'll talk about the, or the G-force and the fact that there's no sound and the way it moves and how it can go in water, out of water. So all of this science, like, I'll let you discover down his show, because it's so, we could be talking for hours otherwise, like, but it's really interesting to understand the reason why Pentagon even declassified it, because this is just insane. And so if those things are all real, it looks like the technology is so much more advanced than ours, like really way, way, way ahead of us. My question is like, why do you think, like, if they are so advanced and, they may just be watching us, because so far, touch wood, they have not invaded. But why do they let themselves be seen? Because even for those who are like, oh, it's the secret military and is like, well, if it was a secret military, these people have like, they're really tight on schedule. They do not mess about. There is not like, for 1 hour, we're going to mix with the civilians and let our super, like that stuff, like those mistakes do not happen over and over again. Like, I do not believe that. They're on point when it comes to schedule. So why are we even seeing it? Like, is it to cause confusion, or is it like, have you thought about this? Like, why are we even seeing it? If it's so advanced, why are we seeing it?
I mean, I think I need to address first, the whole China. I mean, just also for your listeners who's sitting here. Oh, but isn't that just, China or Russia? I mean, that sounds more reasonable. But it's just important to note that, when they put out the report, there was this called the UAP task force in the Pentagon.
So that's the thing I wanted to say. If anyone doesn't like, because I'm not sure, because I didn't know that term until, so sorry, I'm interrupting. Because we always know UFO. So UFO is unidentified flying objects, which most of you know, but UAP is unexplained aerial phenomena. So that's just like a new, it's like a 2.0 version of the word.
Exactly. I think it's, so the people in the Congress and other important places can talk about this without giggling.
Right.
And so they had to make this report, and it came out in June, and it was, historic in a way that
there was the Pentagon report, right?
That they put out a report, trying to cover what they knew about this subject. But unfortunately, the report was very short. And it's only a preliminary report, so more reports are coming. I think there is one due in September actually. So a lot more is happening on the subject. But in the report, which was very interesting actually, it said that out of 144 incidents, only one could be explained.
Yes.
So, and this is only incidents from within the last few years, and then I think the one from 2004.
Yeah, I think it was one from 2004, but all of the 143, however many it was, that's from the last. That was like 1 year. That's like, was it 2 years? Either way, it's not a lot, and that is only U.S. Territory, airspace, right? It's not even talking about South America, Australia,
No.
Europe, none of that. So that's how many we're talking about. That's a lot.
Not even the Air Force, or not even what do you call them? The normal airplanes and stuff like that.
Commercial airplanes,
Yeah, commercial airplanes. This is only the Navy. So and it's only the one who had the balls to go and report it. So still a very small percentage probably, and it had 144 cases, and which is crazy. But they couldn't figure out what it was. So of course, a lot of these will be unexplained because you don't have sufficient data. But a lot of these had multiple sensors. It said, are being recorded on multiple sensors. It said in the report, and they still couldn't figure out what it was. And I mean, this is the Pentagon, folks. It's not, it's not, your uncle in his basement. It's the gold standard of this stuff. Yeah. So it is very weird, and they ruled out the possibility of it being a foreign nation. They ruled out the possibility of this being a private, company testing stuff, and they ruled out the possibility of this being their own tech. And I mean, I'm not saying they wouldn't lie about this stuff, but if we're taking this at face value, it's none of the above. So what is it? And no one is saying alien, because no one dares to say alien. But what is it? It is something. Something is flying out there. Even Obama said we have something in the air and we don't know what it is.
Yeah. And
they describe, the what they call the 5 observables, which are 5 reasons why these objects fly in weird manners. And it's sudden lift, aviation, speed that is unheard of, no sound, low visibility, a lot of these traits. And of course we as the public have limited knowledge of this, because we have the Pentagon videos, we have stuff like that, but they are very hard for the untrained eye to even know what you look at. That's why I was amazed when I talked to fighter pilots and people who know what they look at, who looked at this stuff for 20-30 years, and they were blown away by it. And then you put on top of that, the American fighter pilot, the Luis Elizondo, the former head of the UAP task force when it was called something else. And you have these people who are trained to look at this stuff and they can't figure it out.
And just to give a bit of sort of like a perspective, like, is that, when you say like, they can't like decipher, and you need to be sort of like quite high up to understand. Just to do a comparison, when you go and get an X-ray, even the person whose job it is to read the X-ray, to understand it, they even like that takes training, because even they can miss things, how many times we're not here? Well, we went for an X-ray, well, we missed it. And that's only an X-ray of the human body that we have pretty much of a good understanding, or a lot of an understanding of where things should be. And when there's a foreign body inside, like we can sort of, you think that no, but even that is difficult. So for people to sort of go and try and debunk it, and it's good to try and debunk it, I'm all for it, but it's to maybe just sort of like, I watch it with a bit of like, I'm careful, because I'm like, but how much really do you understand about all the information on that screen? Not only is it grained down, so you don't see the good qualities, but how can, so it's very, it's just, so why would you think? But
let me just say, I broke my toe 3 weeks ago, and I went to the hospital, and yesterday I wrapped my I unpacked my toe for the first time 3 weeks, and my pinky, And what do you call it? The
small toe, I think.
The small toe. Yeah. And then I went to look at the journals because you can look at your own journal. And one description said it was sorry. I called my doctor and I was like, "Is it still supposed to hurt?" And then he looked at my journal and said, "It isn't broken." And I was like, "What?" But I was told it was broken. I was at the hospital. That's here. It's not broken. And then I went to look at my own journal, and one doctor said it was broken, and the other one said it wasn't. So that's just to agree with you on the whole story, that it takes it as soon as the real professional came, he could see that it was in fact broken. But it takes skill. It takes a lot of training, and when I just did a show, actually, it's not out yet, but it's coming out with the notorious debunker Mick West, who is very well known in the UFO community. People love him or they hate him. I think he's a fresh breath of air, even though I do not agree on a lot of stuff.
I don't know him, but I'll check him out, Mick West.
Oh yeah, he debunks. I mean, he just sits there and he completely debunks every UFO video, and there's not a shadow of doubt in his mind that he is correct.
And the thing is that we need people like that, though, because we need people because they almost help the other side. Because often the people who go in conspiracy theories, or they may not feel like they are, but like even, for example, flat earther, all of these, they are really, really passionate, and there's a lot of reason why they feel so. This community, there's a whole community thing, and it's really. This is something of really high value to them. But, there's this documentary I watched about it, and there was scientists you were talking with them. And the scientist said, in the interviews one-on-one with the journalist, said that, we should not be laughing at conspiracy theorists or flat earther, because effectively those were people who could have become scientists, because they have the mind for it. They have the inquisitiveness. And I think, and personally, like, this is what with that is that, like, it helps to show a healthy society. We need to question things, but also it helps even scientists to actually find, this is what people are doubting. Oh, well, this is the argument I'm going to bring, because that's the bit I can prove. So it even helps the science, even though the conspiracy theorists are like, no. But it actually helps science. So they all have a role to play. But does he say, like, I mean, why do you think we are seeing those things if they are so advanced? Like, why are they letting themselves be seen? Whether it is aliens or whether it is, let's say, if it really was US technology and they're like preparing for something bigger than we understand, why are they even being seen? Is it by accident, or what is going on? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, it's probably going to be more of an opinion than anything else.
Oh,
because
yes.
And that's of course also what Mick West says. Like, if this is this kind of tech, why are we seeing it, and why is some of it crashing, and why? There's a lot of questions to be asked. But I just feel that, and also talking to all these professionals, that we know so little. We know so little in general. We know so little about the universe. We know so little about where these things comes from. Whether there may be a rational explanation, which would probably lead us down a whole nother rabbit hole of conspiracy, because then someone is hiding something incredible, or that this is in fact something alien that comes here and aren't too concerned whether or not we see it. I mean, we do not see it a lot. So if they're trying to hide, they're doing a pretty good job, I would say. But you can't. I mean, you really can't fool the equipment of the military, and that is also why I find it hard to believe it could be Russia, or China, because America has the most advanced spy technology in the world, and they would know if someone were
or at least
developing this stuff,
or at least they take pride in it. So it's like, because the thing is like, like if we were to play like the devil's advocate here, it's like, what would almost be the payoff for the Pentagon to play dummy, we don't know what it is. You know what I mean? Like, what would be it's like that, that's also something that to say, because it's really easy to say, it's China, Russia, it's always hidden US technology. But it's like, what would be the advantage? I mean, you'd have to have a really good reason to want to play dumb. Yeah. You have to, and that's almost more scary. It's like, well, what is the reason? Yeah.
Exactly. J.J. Abrams just did a show called UFO, And one of the hypotheses on that show in the third episode, it completely shifts. And I think the director believes that this may be the right angle. And that is that they are in fact hiding American tech. And that is why they have, that's why they're willing to lie, because there's too much at stake. But like, why would you then even release the videos? I mean, just let people think that they are fake. And why would you even go into this whole conversation if you're trying to make people look somewhere else?
I mean, they've kind of done worse, and maybe not worse, but similar. Like they did the thing about, was it like this? It's in one of your episodes with they were saying it was like air balloon or something. Do you remember that bit? Or it wasn't air balloon, or it was air balloon. I can't remember what it was, but it was like, was it back in the 50s or the 60s? And someone saw like a shepherd or something. Was it Roswell? Okay. Like what was it? Did they say it was air balloon and then they sort of admitted it wasn't? I can't remember which way it went.
It's a weird story, right? Because a guy sees something landing. Yeah. That's his take on it. Something is laying there. The Roswell county department, whatever, police department comes. The military comes. They believe it's very weird what is laying there, and the guy, the lieutenant Charles Holt, he puts out a press release saying, "We just found a flying saucer that crashed." And I mean, this came from officials. Mm-hmm. So the story comes out, and suddenly they pull it back. Oh, no, it was just an air balloon. And, you have this guy showing this air balloon. And it was everyone, I think, agreed that was not the case. And I think actually the government even agreed that they were lying because, as they say, they were testing secret spy technique called Project Mogul that was to spy on Russia. So that's the official story. But the problem is, once you lie to the public,
well, that's
it's difficult to know when does the line begin and when does it stop.
But it could also maybe, so let's say if we was to take like a completely different angle to it, right? So let's say if they are lying, but like for the right reason. So, like before it was like lying for like, because, they just don't want to reveal what they know. But let's say if they are, let's say if it is their own technology, US technology, and maybe like releasing those videos, it could also be that they're sort of like drip feeding us information, a bit like what they did with last year with the pandemic. Mm-hmm. They were like, I mean, we all thought we were going to be like locked down for 2 weeks, and then a year later we're still, inside. So it's like, but I could also understand that when I saw people's reaction and how they were going crazy over toilet paper out of all things, that was not what we needed. It was not gastroenteritis, it was not a gastroinflammation we were having. Like, imagine if they'd said at the time, do you know what, you guys are going to be like in lockdown for like, maybe 16 weeks. Like, it would have gone chaos. And I think with things that are so huge, there's only so much that we as humans can handle. There's a reason why we sort of like go soft, or even in relationships, people like, say the 20-year relationship, often it was sort of already ending about 2 years early, but you need a soft exit, you need like a softness to it. And I think that, one of the things that was really interesting in your podcast was there was something about how, and I'm misquoting this, but just because we cannot see something does not mean it's not there. And the example was about, gravity. You can't see, I mean, I can't quantify it, but I know it's happening. Submarines, that was the example also that you guys used, like submarines. I've never seen one. I mean, unless it's like in a museum or something, I don't even know. But I've seen them in movies, but I've never seen one, but they're still going around. Their job is to be invisible to the public and to the enemies. So you believe in submarines? I believe in submarines.
You're crazy.
I'm a hard believer. I'm a true believer. Yeah. So I think that's the bit. It's like, this is where this whole unknown, it's like, it's really hard to know what is. But one of the things definitely that I feel that comes up a lot with the scientists on your podcast is, well, and even like with the fighter pilots, and in the other military people, is that really they don't even understand how that's possible, because with what they know, I mean, it's almost like they have to be like a whole other school of scientists, another completely different university you have to enroll, and only the special people go in, and then they get to do all this crazy technology. So it's hard to know. I mean, I'm like, which one is it? Yeah.
And I'm, I'm changing my own story in my own head every day almost. Yes. Especially when I'm active with the podcast and I'm talking to all these people every week. It completely takes me for a spin sometimes. And the possibilities are endless, and that is both the frustrating and the fascinating part about this subject. That the mystery will probably remain. But we are getting more and more information in these years, at least we think we are. So that is very exciting, but so difficult to say. But I think what Avi Loeb also, the Harvard professor, I think the longest sitting professor at Harvard at this point, very, very intelligent guy, a little bit wrong row, which is, what I like and what Anja likes, is that he is so open-minded. And I think if anything, this subject is teaching us, and, forget about the alien, forget about all that. That is very exciting. But, for something that we know that we can learn from, right here and now, is to listen to other people and to not write them off as crazy, to not laugh at other people, to not put labels on people, and that is what Avi Loeb is standing for, because he's been ridiculed in his own field from other scientists who think he's a complete hack just because he talks about the subject. And Anja has received some backlash as well. I mean, most people love her even more now because they love the show. But some people in the science community are very conservative.
Yeah, and that's your co-host, Anja. That's
a co-host.
An astrophysicist. I just want to say, like, for in case like people may not.
Yeah, of course.
She's
very well known in Denmark. But I think it's the old Carl Sagan expression that extraordinary claims need extraordinary what do you call it?
Is it proof for people?
Proof. That is what people like Anja and Avi Loeb is challenging by saying, but this could lead to extraordinary conservatism. That if no one dares to say something without extraordinary proof, how are we even, moving forward at this point? And a lot of the great scientists who came up with some of the most important stuff that we use to this day, that is saving life and stuff like that, they took big chances and went against the grain. So that's what this, I think, subject represents to people like Anja and Avi.
And it all starts with an idea, right? Everything started with an idea, like even proving that the Earth was round. Start off with like, well, wait a minute, you know what I mean? It has to be a thought first. So we don't have to always have the proof to go, and that's why science comes in. It's all about proving it, and it's not true until we can prove it. And that's a great way to look at it. It's like we need to go through all these different avenues and find out. And one thing, I don't know if this is like, sort of maybe like relevant or not, but because the thing is, I was trying to like explain something, and I realized now that I didn't sort of like put it in the right context. But the thing with like, if we don't see something, doesn't mean it's not here, like gravity, submarine, and so on, right? And the thing is like, I think it was something that came up about in one of the episodes about, if the aliens already are living here, whether it's under the water or it's in a different sort of, was it with quantum physics or quantum? I can't remember which one it was, one of the quantums, but about how basically just because we don't recognize something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And it's like there may be in some sort of a way it is here. And the reason why I bring this up is because, and now I know, you may think I'm crazy, but I had this thought the other day because it was actually one of my guests after the show, like we were chatting, and he just had a baby. But I have never thought about this. But one of the things he said is like how helpless we are as human beings. like how when you have a baby, like they can't turn on their own, they can't feed themselves, they certainly cannot clean themselves, they cannot defend themselves, they're really helpless. And one of the things that came that I thought was like, it's actually pretty incredible that we as a human species have survived this long. Because when you think about it, what came first, the baby or the parent? So there was something lacking, like there was something in the story that, and again, I'm not, I know you had the guest yesterday, evolution researcher, I think. I don't know if that's how you call it in English, but he said it's evolution. And I would love to have a discussion like that with someone, because I'm like, what is the thing that we are not explaining? Because even with animals, most animals are quite, some of them are, especially the reptilians, they're very self-sufficient, they just get let off, like turtles, for example. They don't give a shit. They're just out there. They leave the eggs and they're good, and manta rays and all of those. But it's like, what, like, how did we not get supported in some way? And I know it sounds crazy, but I'm just like, there is something, and I believe in evolution. I love science. I mean, I studied science myself, like biochemistry, more like the human body, right? So, but I love science, but it's just like, there's something, I don't know, am I making sense?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, maybe if you can phrase it as a question.
Like, how do we as a human species survive this long when we are so helpless as little babas, we're just helpless? Like, I don't think it'd be completely crazy to say that we've had help outside. I'm just saying, it's like, because as a baby, if there's no one out there helping me, I'm dying. And that's a fact. Yeah. I think, right? Especially back in the days when we did have house with central heating. So I would not make it. And I'm like, we had to be born first before we became adults. So I don't know if that's something, I don't know if that's going to be discussed on your show, or if that's a bit too far out, but I don't even know why I'm going with this, because this literally just happened over the weekend after this conversation with guests. I was like, how did we survive?
I mean, we do have some of those discussions with Eske Willerslev, the DNA researcher that very, well known all over the world. And we did talk about this actually. And there's so many theories going around that you get completely, thrown for a hoop. But I agree to what you're saying, but I think that we as mankind, I mean, our force is to stand beside each other, to help each other, to be the more, intelligent species, if you can say that. So I don't think it's weird that we survived for so long. I think that makes total sense. But some of the theories that we talked to Eske about was that could there have been a society before us? Could we have been erased once? I mean, did we succumb to a meteor or a volcano or something like that, and then life happened again and again and again, and those are also theories being thrown around. And also, did we come from somewhere else? I mean, there's very, very very well-backed theories that we could come from a meteor from Mars, or a piece of Mars that landed here, and maybe some little organism, because we are still this little organism, just in a completely evolutionized form. I mean, all life share DNA, even from a little bacteria, virus to
we're all carbon based. Yeah,
exactly. And so it's definitely not impossible that we are in fact star people in some way, and maybe we did receive some help from the outside. I mean, it's fascinating to think about that. I mean, one of the things I thought about with these things visiting us, perhaps, I mean, the UFO Pentagon videos, I mean, what if they are drones from somewhere else? What if they are not inhabited by aliens, but they are drones coming here just the same way that we are sending drones to Mars?
Yes.
And beyond. Is that so unlikely that someone is looking at us like a beautiful garden and just yeah.
Well, but the thing is, we are a little bit embarrassing. Like, if people are watching from outside, if they're out here like and sending the drones, and we're probably a bit like like the equivalent of the Real Housewives of New York, which is completely nuts. Because it's like, we are not, as a human species, we are not looking good as a team right now. Like, we are just, anyone could just walk in, conquer and divide, like within 2 seconds flat. You know what I mean? It's just like, there's that group and that group, and especially, go with the Russian and the Chinese, like go take them first. It will be like that. We're just impossible. We are impossible. And although maybe we may unify at last, if there's an actual outside invasion. But
I think so.
Yeah, I hope so. But for how long? Have you watched that series, Netflix Colony? Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it. No.
Oh my God. Okay, you may want to watch that. Honestly, because that shows, it's actually just what would happen if there was an invasion, and it's all about how there's sort of layers to it, and how actually what first happens in the series is not really actually what really happens, and the baddies may not be the baddies, and it's really interesting. But it's about all these way more advanced aliens coming over, and you can't see them. We only see their drones, and only very few people meet them, the high echelons of humanity, whatever that means. But and so again, it's all like an invisible enemy, but that does kill people and kidnap people. But it's very good. It's an incredible film, but I do not advise for you to watch it if you're locked down, depressed. If any one of you goes back into lockdown, do not watch it, because it's like it's almost like the next worst thing that could happen. It's like
But if, as Eske said on my show, as if they are here and if they are looking at us, and he kind of believes that those videos are something from the outside. He says that in the ending of my show, and I talked to him afterwards. They haven't harmed us yet, and he's like, if they are from the outside, I just hope they've been here for a long time, because that would of course mean that they have no intent of hurting us. And I choose to believe that. I don't think there's any threat, anything to be afraid of. Even though there's probably great TV shows and great movies about the threat from the outside, I do not believe that.
Yeah, no, I hope so too. I mean, I do think, I do believe we're not the only intelligent life. I think I've never believed that we were the only ones. Never. I can't imagine that. The galaxy, our galaxy alone is massive. Never mind anything around it. It's just like, how could we? It's in I don't understand, and it will always be like it's just. It's a very interesting philosophical question to dive into. Really, it could take hours and days and months to figure this out. But what it all means if we were the only one, and what it would mean when. For yourself, Frederik, would you rather that we were the only intelligent life ever in the whole universe, or that there were actually compatriots of some kinds, like other intelligent civilization out there?
Oh, definitely other. I think being alone is way more scary and way more, way more claustrophobic, and a way worse thought. And so, I know I really do not. I neither subscribe or like that idea, actually. And I respect anyone that, if that is their view on the universe, but I think it's very unlikely. And I think with modern science and what we know, how many exoplanets and how many planets with the right temperatures we do have out there, it would be highly unlikely and very arrogant to believe that we are so special that we are the only ones. I just don't see that in the cards, really. And I think what is even more convincing to me is, when you talk to some people, it's like we know everything. Like, we have figured out everything. We have the internet, we have Netflix, we have, airplanes, we have a lot of sophisticated stuff. But would anyone think that we wouldn't be way more sophisticated in 200 years? And 200 years is nothing. And like what we know about science today compared to the 1600s, it's a massive difference. And I am sure there were very intelligent people 500 years ago who said this is the absolute truth and it can never be challenged. And 50 years later, it's challenged and it's changed, and now we know something new. And I do believe that it's going to keep happening. We don't know where our understanding of science ends, and if there is something, a component missing, which is also something that the scientists talk about on my show. What component is missing? We still don't understand what is consciousness. We still don't understand what brings life to certain stuff. Why can't we put life into an object? Is what we talked about in the last episode. We haven't figured out. We don't understand what it is. So to think that we know everything is just silly.
And that unexplainable part is that divine part, because we call it, we like to call it the divine because we can't explain it. Like before, they used to think that the sun was, I can't remember. There was so many different elements. They would just say that's the god of thunder, the god of this, the god of that, because they couldn't explain those phenomena, but they didn't have the science. And imagine if you and I went back to the Middle Ages with our iPads and our Fitbits and our phones and all those things. They'll think we were UFOs. They'll be like, who are you? Either that or maybe maybe
they
gods.
would kill us instantly. Take their stuff. Who are these?
Yeah. So, that could also be just to we're going to round up in a minute, but that could almost be maybe what we're seeing. If time traveling was a thing, and let's say if it was a thing, I'd be like, oh, those were people from the future. Yeah, you know what I mean? That could also be an angle. But, how time traveling happens. I need to stop watching all my sci-fi. I watch a lot of sci-fi.
No, you don't. You
I love it. I can't stop it. But did you watch Discovery? Discovery, the new Star Trek on Netflix? Discovery?
No, I haven't started it yet. But, I'm very much into that stuff. So I got to see it. But I just simply haven't.
It's so good.
I haven't got enough time to see all those shows.
Yeah,
anymore.
I know.
Crazy. I have kids, and but you don't have to go back more than 150 years to be able to blow someone's mind. I think Anja Andersen on my show, my co-host, said if I went back and I talked to H.C. Andersen, the famous the writer who did all the big fairy tales, Frozen and Little Mermaid and all of that, the Danish writer, and you just told him that you could go to Italy in 3 hours, and it takes him 3 weeks. He would, that would be insane to him. So we do move very quickly with our understanding of society and science and universe and all of that. UFOs.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Frederik, there is so much I could be asking you and talking to you with. This has been so much fun. I'm really, really excited about this conversation, and I would love to invite you again to come back in, because I know there's going to be so much more coming out on your show regards the Pentagon reports and all of that stuff. So there's going to be more things to talk about. But if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you the finishing thoughts that I ask all of my guests, the 2 questions. And the first one is, what do you wish you'd realized at 18? But what I mean, really understood on the cellular level, not just know in your head, but really understood at 18.
So not like a philosophical thing, but more concrete.
It can be, and it's whatever that question means to you. So okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, I struggled with anxiety in my 20s from bad weed. I smoked a lot of weed when I was young, and I think during my parents' divorce, I got this horrible anxiety, panic attack actually, and I did struggle a lot with panic attacks during my 20s, and I just wish that I knew how to handle worries.
Yes.
Worries is my biggest enemy in the world. It comes to worrying about my children's safety, about my health, about people around me, about the state of the world, and it does absolutely nothing good to have all of these negative thoughts, and I've learned how to manage them through the years, and now I have some techniques that completely, totally works. And I just wish that I could tell 18-year-old Frederik not to worry so much, because it really is. It's a shame. It's not living your life fully happy, and nothing good comes out of it. And it's almost, for a lot of people, I think worrying is almost like superstitious.
Yes.
It's like if I think these happy thoughts, and if I, believe that I am very good at my job, or whatever it could be, or that nothing bad will happen to my family, I will get punished. It's almost really a religious thought, even though I'm not religious. And that is just the most stupendous thing, because no one really believes it, but we in some level we do believe it, and that's why you knocked the table earlier, I heard, and I do the same thing all the time. Yes. And actually, knocking the table is a good thing, because that calms your mind.
It does, it does,
yeah. So I just wish that I had the tools for I knew how to not worry so much, because I've been a worried young man.
No, I love that. I love that you said that. This is such an important thing, and I've been open about this on the show, so people know this, but I've had anxiety and panic attacks and OCD, and it's all about these rituals, and it's all about this trying to stop something that is something bad happening, or it's like the thing with anxiety and worry is always like hypothetical, whereas when you're actually faced with a real issue, you sort of, there's a lot of calm around it, because you just like, I've got to tackle it, I've got to get practical. And I'm very pragmatic when shit hits the fan, but if I'm left alone for too long, which is what lockdowns have been not great for me after a while, is that it's that those imaginary problems are the worst because you can't resolve them. And
you can resolve them, and they are very big in your head, and even though they are not, but I completely agree. It's vacation time. You've been looking forward to vacation, and then on your vacation you start worrying, you start thinking, and maybe you're afraid to get that the big amount, the huge amount of work will stress you when you get back from vacation. But as soon as you get to work, it's actually fun and it's productive. Yeah. And it's the breaks that often are the worst. And but you can always resolve this with rational thinking, to try and really break down where the worry comes from, and you can actually show yourself why there's nothing to worry about.
Yes,
but it's difficult. It's very difficult. It needs a lot of training.
That's why therapists get paid good money, and it's
exactly.
It is a godsend, when we can go to therapy. It really is really helpful. Absolutely. And the second question, Frederik, is what stuff or what do you not put up with anymore?
I simply cannot stand people who are rude. Because one thing is, you could say sexist people or homophobic people or racist people. I would assume that we all do not stand up, that we do not want those people around. But actually, something that really bothers me is like rude people. I can't stand people who are rude. Like, come on, how difficult is it to treat other people with, a certain level of respect? Yeah. And I think maybe me being raised to be a very, polite person, I'm probably too polite sometimes, but, and maybe I don't quite give people the leeway they should have. But yeah, I just can't stand people who are rude in the traffic, and
Yeah, I guess that's like a trigger for you. Like, but it's like because for me it's like there's a balance. So it's like everyone, because I've worked in the service industry for a long time. Even last year when I lost my job, I went back and worked in a cafe. It was all takeaway only, but I've been the server, the waitress, the barmaid, and if someone has a bad day, if a regular has a bad day, it does not even. I don't care, because it happens to all of us. But if someone is rude consistently, I'm like, you're lucky I'm not sneezing in that coffee, because because that's the thought I have. But I want to get paid, so I'm not doing it. But it's just some people is for me the most aggravating one is when people are nasty to people who they perceive are below them in rank. That's the worst. Yeah. If people are rude upwards, I kind of respect them. But if people are rude down, I'm like, whoa, but then they're super polite up or equal. I'm like, wow, you know how to be nice, but you choose not to be because you think you have a disdain for people. So
it's the worst.
It's the worst.
That's why, the whole Me Too movement is also, something that really challenges that, that people who abuse their power. And I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, but but I mean, thank God for that stuff, it's also here in Denmark.
Yeah, it's funny because in Denmark it came out a couple of years later than it did here. I think it's about in Denmark it's usually always a bit like a couple of years later kind of thing. So it was really really interesting. Yeah.
They try. I mean, it tried to break through in 2017 in Denmark, but people didn't catch on. It's almost like UFOs. They didn't really believe in it, I mean, is she telling the truth, or is she just seeking attention?
I was being so naive. I thought, oh wow, maybe that in Denmark we're so good, like we're not even doing that kind of stuff. And then last day when I went home, I was like, oh whoa, it's everywhere. Okay. Yeah.
It just, I mean,
it's all over the world. You can't escape it.
It's all about momentum, At some point, it's too big of an issue to anyone to ignore it anymore, and now it's everywhere. So it's both depressing, but it's also very, very good.
Yeah, it's a needed pain that needs to come out so that we can sort of solve it and move forward and become more decent human beings, Exactly. So Frederik, this has been so much fun. Can you please tell us, like, how can people listen to your podcast? Where, all of the things that you do? I know you're writing a book, and like, please tell us, how can people find you, connect to you, and listen to you? Give us all the good stuff.
Yeah, so you can follow me, of course, on social media. I am Frederik Dirks on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. My podcast Flyvende, tallerken. Maybe you can write it in the show notes or something for the English speaking people. You can go after you. I think you should be able to hear it on Apple Podcast or Spotify, even outside of Denmark. And of course, you can go for the English guest and fast forward my introduction. But it is currently it's being translated, so hopefully it will come out in a fully English version. And there's also some nice people who put my stuff on YouTube and they cut out all the Danish part. So some of my English interviews are, in YouTube. If you search for Flyvende, tallerken, you should be able to find them there as well. And yes, I'm doing a book. It probably will get translated as well. That's definitely something we hope for.
This is amazing. Can I just ask you, how do they translate the podcast? Like, is it your voice in English, or do they get like a voiceover artist to translate it, or is it all AI?
It's actually being worked out in this moment as we speak now. So we are discussing how to do it. They came to me and I'm like, if you can find a way to translate it, I'm all for it, and I will help you. But I do not have the time to do this myself. So they are sort of figuring it out. But to my understanding, it's of course all of the English interviews, and I will do all the introductions in English, in my broken English.
No, your English is good.
It's okay, but I mean, and then with Anja, we will do some of our our talks that normally is before we introduce the guest. We will do some of them again, and then hopefully and then maybe some of the Danish guests we will do the old turn down the volume and have a voice actor trick, because I think for a lot of people it will be exciting to hear some of the Danish guests as well, because some of them are very high level and international, and have great insight on the topic.
Well, if you ever need like a voiceover.
Yeah. You can be me.
I'll volunteer. Yeah, I'll just have to smoke. I'll have to smoke a lot of weed. No, sorry. I'll have to smoke a lot of cigarettes to get a male voice.
Please don't do that if you had it. Or maybe it helps you.
Maybe it'll help. Yeah. But Frederik, thank you so much. And I can't wait for your episode next Monday that comes out. Honestly, and I really encourage everyone to go and check it out. It is a fascinating podcast, extremely well produced and very humble. Really, really love it. Thank you so much for coming on today. Was just so excited. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, and anytime you want me back, I'll be happy to do that.
And that's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate, review, share it, subscribe it on iTunes, follow it on Spotify or whichever platform you listen from. However you show love is how you can support this show. Drop me your questions or suggestions for future episodes via the website at angie-s.com or come and find me on Instagram at @204podcast. See you next week, and until then,
use it now inappropriately.